Mysticsense series podcast episode. In this masterclass, we are going to be covering how to make the shift from being a psychic into a professional psychic advisor. Now, my name is Phoenix Normale, if you're not familiar with me, and this is my last podcast episode with Mysticsense series. So you will not be seeing me in future upcoming episodes, unfortunately, but I can always be reached on mysticsense.com if you search for Phoenix K. Again, search for Phoenix K, and you can find my profile to get a personalized reading or psychic advice with me on the platform. So let's dive into our fascinating subject of becoming a professional psychic and how to do that. So I have been doing professional readings since 2018 when I opened my psychic business. And you can do this as well with the steps provided in this podcast episode. So if you are new or brand new to the spiritual industry or doing psychic readings, make sure to go check out the other podcast I did several months ago about how to become a psychic, how to do readings from beginner up. This video does wrap up the Mysticsense series podcast for our platform, but it is the follow-up of that previous episode where we talked about how to do psychic readings. Now we're going to talk about how to become a professional with psychic readings and do it as a business. Now, I do want to say that this isn't going to include business advice, but it is more of a general guideline for how you can make this shift from doing them for friends and family, for doing them for free, to doing them professionally for people you might not know. Now, we're going to start out with the section of ethics here. So ethics is a broad range of different beliefs and opinions and feelings. And there's no right or wrong when it comes to this. But it's important for you to understand some of the reasons why you want to make this change into reading professionally. Just like in our previous episode about becoming a psychic, we talked about why are you doing this? Why are you interested in learning divination? And just when you're going to think about becoming a professional, it's also super important to ask yourself, why do I want to do this in a professional capacity? Some reasons why people read professionally are because of the energy exchange to create a balance. When you're doing a reading, it sometimes takes a lot of psychic energy, or it takes a lot of your energy, and doing it for pay is kind of balancing that out because money is a form of energy. Some other reasons include doing it, of course, for business reasons, because it's a skill set like any other skill set. The more you do it, the more you practice, the more you get out there and you use your tarot cards, or you use your runes, the better you're going to get at it. And that expertise takes time to develop. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes practice, it takes study. And people feel like after all of that hard work, years of, honing that tool, becoming really good at giving readings, you deserve to be compensated for that hard effort because it is a skill set that not everyone has. Some other reasons why people may want to charge for their psychic readings include bartering. Now we are going to talk a little bit about the different kinds of energy exchanges. I kind of briefly touched on that money is energy, but money is not the only form of energy either. Some people get into divination as a form of bartering because it's a skill set, it's a talent that can be used to trade with other skills or talents. For example, if you have a friend who is really passionate about baking and they're really good at baking cakes, let's say, for example, and you are really good at tarot readings, and maybe you don't want to necessarily bring money into your friendship, so you say, hey, I'll give you a tarot reading in exchange for some cupcakes for my birthday or something like that. That would be an example of bartering. That is just one of many examples of how an energy exchange can occur without necessarily bringing money into the picture. So how exactly do you go from being a psychic on the side as a hobby, in your private life, to doing it professionally for strangers? Well, it takes confidence, and there's three main steps really that I feel is important to follow when you are making this big change. The first step is to get confident and comfortable with your reading style. Really understand the tool you're using, understanding inside out, upside down, right side up, everything. You want to be the expert in this tool, and just really get comfortable with how you read the tool, regardless of what it is. Get comfortable with your style. And practice is super important here. You can practice on yourself, you can practice on your friends, your family. The more you do it, the more comfortable, the more confident you're going to get. The second step in this developing your professional business is to do it on a donation base or a public base. Like, do it for free. Do it by donation. So chances are you have already been practicing with friends and family if you're up to this stage. And now is the time to start getting comfortable with strangers. Now, when you're first starting out, a great way to get comfortable reading for strangers as well as getting more exposure out there is to read on Buy Nothing groups or post on local neighborhood groups and offer a set number of free readings. This can be 5 readings, it can be 3 readings, and a lot of people love this. And it's free, so you're not selling anything, and it gets you practice giving readings for strangers that you don't know anything about. This can also help you build your confidence, your experience, as well as learning how to interact with different types of people. This is something I personally did as well. I offered a set number of readings on my Buy Nothing group, and I met a lot of great neighbors who were into spiritual things that I had no idea were local to me. So this is a fantastic way not only to get yourself out there, but also to gain that confidence and to meet new people locally. It's also really good for networking. So once you're comfortable reading for strangers, reading for all kinds of people you don't know, the next step is to get comfortable with the idea of money. Now, again, I did mention that energy comes in different forms. So when we view tarot readings or oracle card readings or psychic readings in general as a form of energy exchange, that can really help shift our idea about money. Money is a sensitive topic for a lot of people. And when you are dealing with money for the services, shadow work often comes up, and that's a big thing. And I'm using that term a little bit generally. There are many articles out there online. There's some articles on Mysticsense about shadow work specifically, but this is a big thing when it comes to money, because oftentimes when it comes to asking for a fee, people feel uncomfortable. And it's super important to stop and reflect and say, why do I feel uncomfortable asking for this fee? Chances are it's not the fee, it's not the amount, it's not the money, but it's feelings of lack or insecurity around self-worth issues. Not always, but in my case, it definitely was. And in a lot of people's cases, it turns out it's a worth thing. Do you feel like you deserve this? Do you feel worthy? Do you feel like you are capable? Do you feel like your skills are worth this amount of money or are worth money? Those are all questions that come up when it does come to time to charge. So luckily, I do have a few tips, a little bit of advice for dealing with this third step in our process, which is doing them for money. And that is to do it by donation. Okay, so when you are first getting comfortable with this, expect the shadow work to kind of come up, because money, again, is a sensitive topic for a lot of people. And do keep in mind that this is all about an energy exchange. So if your neighbor doesn't have a lot of money, they really want a reading, you can, suggest a barter. Maybe they can do something for you to help you out. That could be the energy exchange. Maybe they know how to do a reading themselves. You can exchange services. You can exchange a Reiki session for a reading, different things. It doesn't have to be money. But when it does come to money, you want to start by doing it on a donation basis. And I personally, again, this is my opinion, I would suggest starting with a donation because that gets you comfortable with the idea of money being exchanged for your service without imposing a certain amount onto people. Sometimes when it comes to money and asking for payments, people feel like they are creating a hardship for someone, or they're creating a burden. They don't want to be a burden on that person by asking them to pay them for their services. Now, if you feel this way particularly, you might want to consider a donation, an optional donation, a suggested donation, because if they can't afford it, they don't have to pay it, but at least it's an option for them to do if they can't afford it and they want to. You can also accept tips. Having a tip jar is another way to kind of accept donations. Put it close to where you're doing the reading, maybe mention it, have a sign, and that can get you comfortable with the idea of money being exchanged for your services. And I feel like this is a super important step in making the transition from doing it as a hobby for friends to doing it professionally, because the fact that people are willing and want to give you money for this skill, for this talent, for this gift that you're giving them, that can be really monumental in terms of your confidence and in terms of your self-worth and in terms of how you view your gift and your ability and your divination as a whole as well, to see that it really means something to someone else. So the donations, the tip jars are great. You can also do sliding scales. And that brings us kind of to our next point, is from this point on, we have been talking about doing free readings, or at least optional charged readings. But next you want to get into actually asking for money. So this step of the process is when you really start to become a professional. And this is when you're asking, you have a set fee. You say, this is what I charge for a reading. Now, if you're still getting comfortable with the idea of money at this point, you're not quite confident with it, you can go back to the previous steps at any time. You can start reading more for friends or family. You can start offering some free readings, but you do want to be careful that you aren't giving out too many free readings, because that can actually undermine how much you value and value your skill set and how much you view your worth. So a good guide for people that are still getting comfortable with readings, or with the idea of charging, but they don't really want to set a set fee yet, is to exchange. Again, with that bartering, you can exchange in, like, give a reading for honest feedback. Give a reading in exchange for, an honest review and honest feedback. Have them tell you what they think about the reading, where you can improve, kind of an evaluation. That can help you know exactly where you can improve your practice and how to do it. When you are charging, you can start by looking at the averages. And now this is where it's going to get really technical. Okay, because what you want to charge is going to depend on where you're located. It's going to depend on the industry. Like, we are the spiritual industry. We're part of the entertainment industry. So you do want to look at the spiritual industry in your area. Some places don't have a spiritual industry present. In that case, you want to look at similar adjacent industries, usually under the entertainment umbrella, but it can also be similar services that are being offered. So really do some research, do some digging. This is a super important step, because it's going to make you know what is kind of expected, what the averages are, and also help you to set your first rates so that they're affordable, they're appropriate, but they're also not shortchanging yourself, because you don't want to be lowballing way below everyone else. That's something a lot of new psychics try to do. They try to have the lowest number, and that can actually be detrimental to your success, because first of all, oftentimes clients are more skeptical about people who have a super low rate, because they wonder, is this person legitimate? Do they really know what they're doing? And another thing that can happen is that you get poor quality clients, because your rate is so low. They don't take it seriously. They don't really care as much about the advice, or they're not really listening. And other things that can happen is that you don't retain clients, because when you're doing this professionally, you really want to add value to people's lives. And this goes back to the first step of our previous episode about how to start doing readings, is that, why are you doing this? Are you doing this to add value to people's lives? Are you doing this to help someone in a deep way that other things might not be able to? Are you just doing it for the money? Really look at why and ask yourself these questions, and know that you want to attract the clients that resonate with your style and that resonate with your purpose. And if your purpose is just to have people have a good time, or enjoy getting a reading, or just purely entertainment, that's fantastic, but you want to be targeting those people. But if your purpose is to really help someone on a deep level and to give someone some deep, profound spiritual advice or direction, in possibly their life path, where they're headed or what's going on around them, then you want someone who's going to actually listen to that advice and take it a little more seriously. Now, we did talk about, in the previous episodes, how serious they take the advice. It's going to depend, but you do want people that actually care about what you have to say, and they're coming to you for a purpose that aligns with the purpose that you have for giving the reading. So your price is going to affect the type of clients that you get. It's one of many variables that will affect the type of clients you get. So if you are setting a really low price, you are going to get clients that might not resonate with your purpose and your mission in doing this. That's just something to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is that the price that a client comes in at is often the price they're going to stay at. This is not a firm set rule, but you do want to keep that in mind if you are approaching this from a relationship-based business perspective. You want to build quality clients, repeat clients. They come to you regularly for psychic advice. You want to think about the rates that you're starting at, because if you significantly change them, it may change the types of clients and how many clients that you get coming to you. So with that said, when you are setting your rates for the first time, you're going from that donation-based setup to a rate-based setup. You want to think about several things. There are different ways to charge your services. Some people charge per minute, some people charge an hourly fee, some people charge per session. Some people use a set number of cards or runes or tools for each reading. For example, if you have a 5-card reading for $20, it doesn't matter how long it takes, but it's only 5 cards. Other people say a reading period is $25, and it may be a whole number of cards, but that reading, that question, is that set rate. Other people charge $50 for 30 minutes. A 30-minute on the timer reading is going to be that price. Some people charge per minute. It could be $1 a minute. They just set their timer. If it's 20 minutes, it's $20. If it's 30 minutes, it's $30, etc. So you want to think about how you want to charge your readings. What makes the most sense to you? Now, you also want to think about, what the averages, again, are in your area. And you can look at what other people are charging, entertainers. You can look, if you're doing Reiki, you can look at what are massage therapists charging? What are other therapists charging? Aromatherapy, what are they charging hourly? What are they charging per session? And that could be your baseline for an average. Now, when you are starting, you may want to do it slightly below average because you are just entering the industry and you are brand new. But you don't want to lowball it, because, again, doing that can set some red flags. People start to question, okay, how legitimate is this person if their prices are way down here and the average is here? So slightly below average is good. Around average is good. If you want more high-end clients, you can do a little bit above average. Now, the key here is to pick a number you're comfortable with that also reflects your value system, as well as the market and the environment that you're reading in. So when it comes to setting the prices, it is very personal. I'm not going to give any suggested numbers because it really depends on you. It depends on where you're at, and it depends on what your readings entail. But you do want to slowly raise that number over time. So a lot of people, as they get more experience doing professional readings, as they get more reviews, they get more client feedback, they'll slowly start to increase that number, increase their base rate. However you want to do that, whether it's adding a $5 extra onto a session, or whether it's charging, a few cents more per minute, you want to slowly increase that over time, over the course of maybe a couple months, so that you are reflecting your increase in skills and your increase in talents, your increase in experience. And your reviews will hopefully reflect that as well. So let's talk about the environment to start professionally reading in. So when you are just starting out, it can be helpful to do readings in a group setting. And what I mean by that is if you have a psychic fair local to you, that is a great venue to begin doing readings professionally, because chances are there's other advisors there, there's lots of new customers there. You can watch and observe how other people do their readings, how they interact with the customers, what the customer service is like, the whole energy, the overall theme of the event. And it's really usually quite welcoming to newcomers. Not always, but usually it is. And that can just be a really powerful and transformative experience. It can give you confidence seeing all of these other spiritual practitioners doing these things that they love, doing these readings professionally and getting the money that they deserve that reflects the energy they put into their work. So starting out with the psychic fairs is a great way to begin. You do want to keep in mind, though, that you want to be charging an appropriate price at these fairs, because if you charge way too less or if you're working on a donation basis, it can be seen as unfair to the other advisors that are charging a flat rate at the event. So do keep that in mind. Another thing that is great for new beginners on their psychic journey into their professional practice is to just do them in person. So I do suggest people starting out begin in person. As you gain more experience from the psychic fairs, as you start networking, or even just doing them by appointment only, you can even start to reach out to stores, metaphysical shops. Lots of different kinds of shops will have a tarot reader, a psychic reader, or they'll have business cards for a reader. And if you can get into a shop, then this is probably something for someone with a little more experience, because you tend to have to market yourself a bit more. But being in a shop in person can really help you gain exposure, and it can really help you create one-to-one connections in a professional setting that's in person, and really help you to build that rapport with people you don't know. So shops are great, but that's probably for a little more experience. Now, if you are someone who wants to work online, I personally do recommend that you start in person first, so that you can get comfortable with the level of interaction and the professionalism that is expected from a paid reading. It is different in some situations than a free reading, because they're literally a client coming to you for a professional service, which is a lot different than just getting a reading from your friend. So I do suggest people do it in person, whether it's by appointment, whether it's at a psychic fair, whether it's by donation basis, because that is just a really good way, again, to get that rapport and to get that expectation of what a client advisor dynamic would look like in practice. Shops are also a good place to do donation-based readings, and you can even volunteer to do them for charity events or other public events or parties as well. And if you're still dealing with the shadow work that comes up with the money situation that I touched on earlier, doing a donation-based reading at a special event, like a one-time event, is a really good way to kind of get more comfortable with this idea. Now, spiritual burnout is very real. You do want to watch yourself at first for signs of burnout, because if you're doing too many readings at one time, it can deplete your energy rather quickly. And again, everything is energy. So these energy exchanges, whether it's being paid or bartered or by a review or feedback, that exchange is really important. And it's also important to ask yourself, am I doing too much? Am I overextending myself psychically, especially at first, especially if you're doing free readings. So do watch yourself, and if you need to step back, do that. One-time events are good, I feel, for people that are just starting out, because there isn't an expectation that you have to do reading after reading after reading after reading for days on end. Sometimes if you're working at a shop, you have to be there like every weekend, or you have to be there certain days. And if you get a lot of clients back to back, it can be very overwhelming or exhausting. So when you are starting out, one-time events are perfect. Psychic fairs are fantastic. Because oftentimes these events are only 1 or 2 days at a time. Now, again, with the environment, with the online readings, once you get comfortable with that client advisor dynamic and you're starting to get really comfortable with how to act and how to approach your clients and your disconnection techniques and your protection techniques and how to tap into and disconnect from energies and the money aspect of it, online platforms are really great. Mysticsense is a great online platform with many great advisors, myself included. You can start to apply for these when you feel confident enough. Now, the confidence is super important because you need to really trust yourself and your abilities. You need to trust you can provide this service and that the service you're providing is worthwhile, that it means something. That it has value, and that's super important when it comes to your rates as well. That's just something to keep in mind. I would personally suggest this for someone that has at least a couple months of experience of in-person readings. But again, that's my opinion and it's not a rule. Really listen to your intuition, listen to your gut feeling, listen to how you feel about this before you make that decision. So let's dive into a little bit of the business aspect. This is going to be super limited because I am not a financial professional and I'm not a legal professional, so I cannot speak on those issues. But I can share my personal experience with the structure and the business side of things. So one huge benefit to psychic platforms such as Mysticsense is that they have a lot of structure to them. They have the platform, they have a certain level of marketing, they have a certain level of exposure. All of that is really helpful when you're first starting out. Now, again, I have mentioned you do have to have confidence. You have to feel comfortable with the money aspect before you dive into an online platform. But once you do, there is a little bit of almost peace to it, that knowing that you're not just out there on your own, but that you have a company supporting you. So if you are on your own, again, the in-person events, the in-person business interactions and things, networking is super important, but psychic fairs can also help with this because they often have a lot of in-person advertising as well, such as local venues, paper ads, etc. So that can give you a little bit of peace of mind as well. So you do want to be very aware of your local laws, your local rules. This is going to vary significantly depending on where you're located, but be super aware of this because you don't want to accidentally do something that you are not supposed to be doing. You don't want to get in trouble. So do your own research, do your due diligence before you start setting a flat rate fee or a hard fee. Now, with donations and free readings, I feel like that really, again, is going to depend on your location as well. Definitely check into that. But if once you start setting a fee and charging rates, then you really need to know what is and is not okay, what your local laws say about small businesses. In my case, I personally set up a small business in my own name that I run my readings through as an entertainment business because the psychic industry, the spiritual industry, often falls under the umbrella of the entertainment businesses. One of the benefits to having an in-person readings, whether it's a psychic fair, whether it's a shop or appointments only, is that you can have word of mouth advertising. Word of mouth is a particularly powerful form of advertising because it really lets people's experiences speak for themselves. And this can be done through business cards, but it can also be done with incentives. You can give people incentives for referring their friends. This is done in a lot of entertainment industries, and not just the spiritual industry, but others as well. And word of mouth is super powerful, especially when you are first starting out on your psychic journey. Again, you can get these word of mouth referrals when you are in step one of giving the free readings to your friends, family, and neighbors. in that first step, even the donation step, you can say, if you refer someone, I will give them a discount, or just create some really fun incentives. Maybe give them another free reading for their referral. Whatever is comfortable to you, whatever you feel is appropriate and values your time and values your skills, while also giving that incentive for people to come to you and to share what you're all about with others. Now, another thing that is important to consider is the costs associated with going professional with the divination arts. So there are costs associated with this, not only the divination tool itself, the table, the chairs, any costs about going to the psychic fairs. Sometimes you have to pay a table fee to be there. Sometimes you don't. You want to factor all this into your expenses, and this is also going to impact the rate that you charge your clients as well. So do keep in mind that there's a cost to doing this. There's the business expense, there's the tools, there's the divination tools you have to pay for. There's the event. Sometimes, again, there's a fee to be at these psychic fairs. There's a fee to be at these various events, and that all of those business expenses are important to consider and to factor into what you charge when you do become a professional advisor. And it's important to remember as well that there is no right or wrong way to do this. These steps are not necessarily linear, but they are important steps in the process of becoming a professional. And you also want to look at your professional appearance, how you're presenting yourself, your own energy, your own mindset, and how do you want the world to see you as a divination professional, as a psychic professional? How do you want people to view you? And creating that trust as well is super important. When you're first starting out, it can be helpful to create a portfolio of your experiences. Journal down how you felt at that psychic fair, how you felt at that shop. You can write down your experiences, what went great, what didn't go great. Is your marketing doing well? Is it doing poorly? Do you need some more advertising? All of those things are important to put in your portfolio, because this is really going to change and vary depending on you. Each individual is different. We all have different energies, and that is going to affect how we approach this business as well. So don't be afraid of it if you want to become a professional psychic. Just make sure that you really think about these things before you dive headfirst in, and that it is a gradual process that is going to change and develop over time. It's not just a quick thing to start. It's not a quick startup, but it takes time to develop the trust, to develop the confidence, and also to go through the shadow work of charging for services. Remember that doing psychic work, it does take a lot of time and energy. It takes a lot of devotion, and it also takes a lot of investment in the form of tools as well as other things like marketing supplies. And ultimately, this is going to affect your final price. And you also want to have goals for what your target is and know your purpose in doing this. Just like any other business, there are certain rules you have to follow. So make sure you research them before you get started, so that you know what to expect and you know how to do the things that you have to do. And before you get started, I strongly suggest creating a worksheet of your expenses. This can be really helpful when it comes time to charging for the services. Remember that offering discounts to long-term or loyal customers can be a great way to encourage and create long-lasting client psychic relationships. It's a great thing to do to reward people who are loyally seeking out your services, your advice over time. Everyone has different opinions about the psychic industry, the spiritual industry, and that's okay. It's important as professionals that we respect each other and each other's boundaries and understand that there is no one right or wrong way. This way that I've presented is just one way that I have found personally helpful, but it's not the only way to embark on this endeavor. There are so many different aspects to the spiritual industry, to the psychic industry, to this work, and there's so much beauty in the different aspects, and specialty, having a specialty can be one way that you can set yourself apart from other people in the industry, because everybody has their own take on it. Everyone has their own experiences, their own history. So really setting up a specialty, and this can happen later on as well. It doesn't have to start from the beginning. It can help you stand out, and it can also help you become a beacon of hope and become that trustworthy expert in whatever that specialty is. Some people specialize in animal communication. Some people specialize in relationships. Others specialize in past life regression. There's so many different areas you can specialize in. And having that specialty can help you build trust with your potential clients, because you know a lot about a certain thing. Not everyone knows everything, and it's important to stay humble when you are doing spiritual work as well, and be open to learning and expanding, because this is a never-ending journey. We're constantly evolving, we're constantly learning and growing and expanding into new directions, and that's a great thing. So I do hope that this podcast has been super helpful for you, and I hope that it helps you to expand into new directions in your journey of life, whether that is becoming a professional psychic or not. And I hope that these tips help you as well in your professional life and your growth. You can use and apply these tips in any way you want to any area of your life as you see fit, and see where it takes you. Thank you so much for watching. Again, this is my last podcast episode, and I deeply appreciate the time we spent together on the Mysticsense series. And you can always find me and get a personalized psychic reading or advice at mysticsense.com. Again, my name is Phoenix Normale. You can find me when you search Phoenix K. Thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you have a lovely evening.